Good evening. I am Tiffany Linnell, and this is special pre debate coverage. We have our first debate tonight between Harris and Trump, and I am with my amazing co host. I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Alex Haynes, and it's good to be with you tonight.
It's always good to be with you as well. I know we have a few minutes before the debate begins, and so we're not just going to come on here and just talk and talk and talk for hours because that's not what we do here
I
at this network.
mean, I'm here actually because I'm a little bit excited because I think,
Yeah.
and I'm calling it excitement because otherwise it would be frustration,
Uh-huh. Yep, that's one
mourning,
word. Mourning's a good word.
turmoil,
Yes. Yes.
um, disdain.
Yes. Yes.
Did I say frustration,
I
anger,
think so. It bears repeating.
pain?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
type of foolishness that comes from that level of from
Exhaustion.
what we've been through for the last umpteenth years. I'm
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited because I want to see what happens tonight. I'm excited because I feel like the people that have been asleep for the last 2 years and aren't really involved in political season, they are awakened to, you know, a new light,
Hope, one might say.
new light, new love, new world, new hope, new. Come on, let's just be new.
And I'm all for that. I think that I also am excited, all of the things that you said, working through exhaustion, but anticipating tonight. So let's go over the rules really quick for tonight's debate. It will be hosted by ABC News. They have 90 minutes. So it begins at 8:30. Nope, at 9 Eastern, 8 Central. And it will continue until approximately 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central. They have two commercial breaks planned. The candidates will stay on stage during the breaks. They cannot speak with their staff. There are no opening statements, no studio audience. Only the moderators will ask the questions. They have 2-minute answers, 2-minute rebuttals, and 1-minute follow ups. These are pretty standard rules for the debates. No pre written notes allowed. A pad of paper, pen, and water bottle are provided on the lectern. That's in
What do you
case.
mean? Are you telling me that Trump can't have his uh truth feed up to read off his talking
No,
points or
no,
hate tweets
cannot.
for the evening? Oh, okay.
He cannot. He cannot do any of that. He cannot have, we are hearing that his team has asked him to be calm and, have some couth, act like an adult, what he is supposed to be. But he actually cannot have any notes. We'll see how much he'll be able to stick to the scripts that they gave him because no notes, but they can have pad of paper, pen, water. The pad of paper and the pen is, I'm assuming, in case they want to write notes or anything for a rebuttal, then they can do that. Or if they have a thought or something like that, then they'll be able to do that during the debate. Trump will deliver the closing statement last, and the most important part. The microphones will be muted when the other candidate is speaking. So if Trump is speaking, then Kamala Harris's mic will be muted, and vice versa. And I won't say which one I'm more excited about, but that is very important. But that is to help with lack of interruptions between the two candidates.
My desire is that he is muted for the rest of my life. And I know that there's another portion of America they're not ready for that yet. They are not ready, for the next steps or really ready to relinquish, um, you know, their love
Control
and affection and
power,
admiration and foolishness that they have towards him.
right?
Um, they're not ready to know let that go. So as we're starting to get information, or we see that things are gearing up in
Mhm.
Philadelphia. Tiff spoke about what she's watching for. If we get any breaks today, I'll jump in to talk about what I'm looking for. And then after the debate, which begins right now, we'll be here to unpack everything. Probably will be on another
Laid
session.
back. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so at this point, we're going to jump over to ABC News Live and jump into their simulcast of the first and possibly only debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And we will see you in just a few.
Yep. Enjoy the debate.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
Let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having, on the short end of the stick, in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot? She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter, because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to, because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it, because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question,
you
would you
could
veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking
television
it from the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
here. Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse
President
me,
Harris,
the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Don't lie.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get to.
environment that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just ask you,
David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people They covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
Whoa. It's all up in my grill. All right. Welcome back. Well, we've been watching this crazy. What is going on? And with my camera as well. Like I don't even know what to do here. But we don't have long to talk about what's happening. So let's just get to it. If you're following along, I'm gathering myself.
Because what the hell?
What the hell?
I just really don't know another way
And
to say
I
that.
know this. I know who he is.
We do.
So why am I
Yeah.
shocked? Why am I confused? Why am I like I just don't really understand how, why, like what is exactly.
I don't think it's shock. I think it's I think every time he comes into public again, it's just the doubling down on his lies and the doubling down on, I want to say, maybe early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, but I feel like that's offensive to anyone who has been diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's, and I don't want to do that to them because I've had family members diagnosed with both of those illnesses, and it's a very serious issue. And I don't think it's that. I just think he, as Tim Waltz said, they're weirdos. Like you said, you really said with your whole words and mouth that people are eating their pets. And I don't know that you could make this kind of stuff up. And if you can't make this kind of stuff up, where is he getting this from? So first of all, VP Harris did a number on him when it came to abortion and reproductive rights. I mean, did a number on him. Hands down, absolutely checked all the boxes. If we're scoring by topic, she took that one easy peasy, like no contest at all.
Again, we start here and also say that Vice President Harris is prepared. Okay, she did her homework.
Absolutely.
She reminded you of what you already know.
Yes.
And so for those of you that came thinking that he's changed, he allegedly was shot. And he said he was going to change. And he told his people after a week of celebrating when he thought he was running against Joe Biden that he was a changed man. They started declaring prophecies from some Bible and a Lord that was speaking to them and saying that he had indeed changed and he was ready. But he's the same person. I mean, there's been lie after lie after lie. I'm not interested in the fact check tonight. I really want to get to the most egregious things that remind us of how egregious of a person he is, and why they don't want to talk about he's a threat because it's not polling well. But we should be concerned and saddened that people would even consider that we deserve someone like him to be our leader.
Because now this country and the people within, we have committed a lot of sins, so to speak, for lack of a better way to say it. But we don't deserve that. Nobody
don't deserve this.
That. And the
we
fact
don't
that
deserve it.
The Republican Party legitimately chose him, this person, this man, this really weird man, again.
Like, in no way do we deserve this at all.
It's just crazy. So keep watching the debate. We'll keep coming in. We'll be back for the next break. Back to the debate duel that's happening. I have nothing else.
As well.
And I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up, Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
She has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump-
no, the
President
former
Trump-
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I just
going
need
to move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he
President
has said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
Correct.
Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. and you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed, for the first time, Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it, pass this prologue in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to give. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
You know, I'm still low on words.
Because I have not heard him. I think I've heard him directly answer maybe 2 questions.
Questions is not his thing, and I understand his style. I understand who he is. I understand, you know, why he shows up the way that he does. But I'm extremely frustrated, confused, and I feel played. But again, I keep saying I'm sad. I'm very saddened that I feel that America has had to deal with this ever.
And that we continue to have to deal with it. Like, I just don't understand.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
This was a choice. This was a choice. And I think that's what's
and
so
it's a choice that people continue to make.
And that's where the heartbreaking piece is. This is a choice that not only have people made, but that an entire political party has made. And I'm just watching this baffled, like, y'all really made this choice.
What I want you to do, because I know that we have a short time, they're on a break, and we got to come back and analyze this, but I want you, because there's been so much that you've captured, we've been able to share things. I want you to get your social media feeds connected. We're gonna have to share our screens as we share our commentary. So
yeah,
I think that's the best way we can highlight on conversations, maybe even threads or conversations that other people, things that they caught that we haven't. But we gotta give this what it's worth.
She's cooking him, and if for no other reason than
he was baited over and over and over again. But you know,
she's actually answering the questions. He, even on the last question on climate policy, she was very direct. The question was, "What are you going to do to fight climate change?" She started off out the gate.
Did not answer
climate change is a hoax.
Like, he didn't answer a question.
Not one. Well, he did answer the one on what would he do on the war in Ukraine, but that was only because Lindsay Davis doubled back and said, so the question again, do you believe that the war in Ukraine needs to end? What would you do about the war in Ukraine? And then he answered directly and said it needs to end. But he rambled for his full 2 minutes before that. And that's what he
My thing about this, and this is something that they do as a party, as a whole, as an organization. And my problem is that journalists, organizations, it seems like they can't see it coming, because these people wait for an opening, like they lie and lie and lie, but they wait for openings to get their documented talking points out, which is why when he spoke, and we're going to cover it, when he said that thing about transgender, alien, my instruction was to put that into a search engine or into your whatever social media platform you're on, and add Fox News or Newsmax to that, and you will see who he was talking to, because it didn't make sense to so many people, and you can lose it by saying, well, he's rambling. He was talking to somebody. He was talking to a certain group of people, and those people and that's why they try to get those talking points in. I can't wait to discuss this. I'm over it, but it must be done.
Same. I agreed. Because Jesus on high. What a show.
And if you're just joining us, this is Debate Night. We are live with the presidential debate in Philadelphia. And President Trump and Vice President Harris are going to give their final statements.
And the other that is focused on the past and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Well, what a time, what a time.
To be alive, because
What a time, what a time. Can we talk about what you saw? Can we talk about what you felt? Can we talk about what just happened?
Okay, so my initial thoughts. I knew
What just happened?
it would be bad for Trump. I didn't know it would be quite that bad for Trump. I mean, it was literally one of the worst takedowns on a debate stage that I have ever witnessed.
You know what? Let's reset. If you're just
Okay.
joining us,
Oh yes, let's do
if you're
that.
just joining us, because we can jump right into this. You can start to feel our emotion. I've had to change a lot of things about tonight from where, like, I don't even really care about the makeshift set tonight. I really don't know. I had to go get something that could free me so that I could say what I need to say, emote how I need to emote, punch the air if I need to punch the air, and then apologize. I feel like we should all be apologizing to each other for allowing this to go on as long as it's gone on.
Because why have we done that? Why hasn't someone said, you know what? Enough is enough. We don't need to do this anymore. Joke's over. We could just not do this. And I just feel like at some point, surely I'm going to wake up, and I can't be like Biggie, it was all a dream, because this is a nightmare to have a political party, one of our two primary political parties, choose this man as their official candidate for president of the United States. Just seems asinine, to say the least, delusional at best, and inconsiderate, disregarding, arrogant, and so many other things.
I'm just
That I
so
can
embarrassed
pinpoint.
for America
I'm
that was
actually
ever
done being embarrassed for
your
America.
ever representative. I mean, by birth and some documents that were generated when that happened, I have a stake in this place, and I do. I'm, you know, I'm an American. as painful as it is, and again, it's not you and I. We're not the only people that feel like it's painful.
Right. And it is very painful. I'm gonna pull up our notes document that I couldn't even take notes in fast enough. Um, so I'm just
Yeah,
gonna have
I'm trying to get mine together too. I was really not trying to.
no, I'm just gonna have to use it as a heading. But what I did not hear them talk about too much, other than and we said we were gonna pull up our social media, so I'll do that now. One of the things that I didn't hear too much conversation about was LGBTQ plus rights. Other than him saying that really outrageous line about her wanting to allow or perform transgender operations on immigrants. Is that, did I read that correctly? Yes, Donald Trump thinks Harris is giving gender reassignment surgery in prisons to illegal immigrants. And so I just, when he said that, I was like, there's no way I heard that correctly. Because it just sounds outrageous. But they didn't too much hit LGBTQ plus rights this evening. There was a lot of talk about the border and immigration, even on questions that weren't on the border and immigration. It seemed like Trump was back to his tricks of, I'm just going to redirect. And every time I don't know the answer to a question or I don't have a firm stance on a policy, I'm going to redirect to either immigration and the border or China or Russia. At one point, he started talking about Viktor Orban. At one point, he started talking about the strongman. So he did a lot of
Can we
redirecting.
pause there for a second? Can we pause
Yes,
because I want to hit that for a second.
yes,
So he accused Vice President Harris of how should I say? Uh, he was very accusatory towards her about her relationship with Putin.
he was.
After he said that he knows Putin well
He did.
and that he would be able to, and then after he was accusatory towards her, then he said that he knows Putin well again.
He did.
But he did not answer the question about whether or not he wanted Ukraine to win the war.
He did not. Not at first. Not until Lindsey Davis went back and repeated the question again and said, "So, do you want Ukraine to win the war? Do you
He
want
still
the
gave
war?"
you a half answer.
He did. And sadly, that was still better than half of his responses to some of the other questions. So, I mean, I don't do with that what you will. But that was one of the few questions in the second half of the debate that he somewhat answered. And like you said, it was still only just half a response. Um, of course, there was a lot of blaming of Harris about the border. One of the questions was, why did the Biden administration wait so long or wait to act about the border? And Vice President Harris started talking about how Trump essentially called some congressional members and killed the bipartisan immigration bill that was up, which is true. That has not been a secret, and he didn't necessarily deny that he did it, because then when the question was flipped to him of why did you call some congressional members and kill this bill, he redirected again and never responded. But
And you
he
know,
didn't deny, he
if
didn't
I was
deny
going to say, well, if I would pinpoint a place where there was a miss there, because why did you call these congressional members and do that? Why did you call Georgia and ask for 11,000 votes?
it.
You
Yes.
seem to have a habit of calling, and there's no sign that you would stop doing that because your Supreme Court just said that you have presumed immunity for official acts, which means that the prosecution, if it ever came towards you, it would be delayed and only happen with bona fide proof,
Right. And
which
just
gives you the leeway and the justification to keep doing it.
yes. And just as a reminder or a note for anyone who has never listened to us before or is not aware of the Supreme Court decision that Alex is talking about, he's referring to the immunity Supreme Court decision that was just decided in the last session with the Supreme Court that decided that the president can be excused essentially or is immune to official acts but is not immune for unofficial acts, while the definition of both of those is very ambiguous and left up for interpretation in the Supreme Court decision, which Sotomayor dissented. Sotomayor and Jackson dissented strongly.
What about um,
Don't even ask.
I almost said Uncle Tom, and I know that's not that man's name, but it is Uncle Thomas. Thomas.
Um, he he Lord Jesus help me. He did not dissent. He actually was a concurring opinion. Not only was he a concurring opinion, he took it a step further in his concurring opinion and gave Judge Eileen Cannon a bit of uh, leeway, essentially, in what she could decide to do in order to try and throw out the case that she was overseeing in Florida, which she was doing all of the delay tactics that she could. Then all of a sudden, the Supreme Court decision came down. She made her decision. And then I think 2 days after she made her decision to throw out the case, then it was the RNC. So I'm not going to say it was coincidental timing, but it didn't seem very coincidental. And again, Justice Thomas literally put in his concurring opinion on the immunity case for the Supreme Court, you should do this. If I was in this situation and overseeing this case, here is the reasoning that I would give to throw this case out, is essentially what he said in his decision. So that's what happened with.
Oh, I wish we could really dive into that because they also use that in their uh, case, well, not case, but in the pretrial hearing with Judge Chutkin, and they
Yes,
said that they were instructed.
they did.
Shock.
And that judge immediately stopped and said,
She
what?
didn't read it that way
She did not
because
read it
neither
that
did
way
I.
because
I
neither
think that was
did
the
I.
proper response. Who read it that way?
Yeah,
Not I.
it was a problem. We need to just do a whole other show on the different court cases and things of that nature because I did hear that and was actually laughing when I heard that that judge
100%,
was
and it's totally worth the deep dive.
absolutely, absolutely. And so one of the first comments that Vice President Harris said at the top of the debate, I don't recall what the question was, but she went to answer it, and essentially, I think it was really just part of their opening kind of comments and answering and responses. And she said, "Donald Trump doesn't have a plan for you." And I said, "Well, actually, that's kind of the end all be all. Debate over. Donald Trump doesn't have a plan for you."
I
He
mean,
tried
for me, there was a lot of things that she said at the onset, and I was like, well, I could be gone, but
exactly.
I'm not here for my me. I'm not here for me.
I'm not here for me. We're
I
here to
think
give the
that I'm not here.
people.
I'm not here for me. I'm here for y'all.
We're
That's
here to give
really
the people what
what
they
this is
need.
about. And that's the reason that I'm moving around is because I wanted us to really get to, and I'm going to follow you on some of that, but I wanted us to really get to and kind of comb through some of this reaction in real time.
Right.
And it takes an entire team of millions uh, to give you even some of the most bullshit productions that you see on cable. And who am me to judge?
You know what?
That said, I know that you were using this hashtag on Threads.
I was.
So while my cam views may change, it's because I've got multiple things up as we try to figure this out. So
Listen, this is what we do, and it's debate night, so here we are. I should have
yeah, we
grabbed
got to
my
flesh this thing out. So
yeah, I should have grabbed my beverage, but it's
if you
okay.
haven't done so, go ahead and send that email. You call
Yeah,
in, you'll be late.
yeah,
You
yeah.
were up because you had to follow through, and we had to get through this.
You had to
And
follow up
because
on democracy.
and really this is really so that you can take it and have these conversations, because while you will hear this spun in so many ways, the spin on this is going to be to the point where it's so ridiculous. I'm a sucker for political news, so while I'm doing that, I'm going to make sure that I have it to watch it later to see how it was spun. Um, but our goal here is to never spin anything for you.
No,
And ultimately, I hope people do get clarity from the effort and the work that we put in. But Black people, we're looking at you, and this is for you. And amen.
and Ashe. So one thing that we have to cover, and I'm going to pull up my threads as well. But one thing that he said after she said, Donald Trump doesn't have a plan for you, and she repeated it when he went to rebut. He said she doesn't have a plan. It's like 4 sentences: run, spot, run. And it was at that point that I said, "Oh, she's about to cook him."
I'm not gonna lie to you. At that point, I knew because I had put my wine to the side because I
Okay.
said I need to be
Okay.
somewhat coherent. I wanted to be aware. I wanted to be connected.
Yes.
Um, I don't know Chris D. Mowry. Don't know who you are. Would love to meet you because absolutely. And if you're one
Because
America, because
yes,
the thing is, if you're wondering how people were feeling, it doesn't matter the platform, except
right.
probably Truth Social and
Yes.
X. You
Yeah.
need to be careful on there because certain things just all of a sudden you won't be able to search them anymore
Right. Right.
because the
Agreed.
person that owns it doesn't want you having these conversations. Though he's said he bought it so that it could be a public square that did not include censorship. But it's very censored, so be careful. And probably less
And
than
not
10% of
censored
what
in
you
the
see
right
on
way.
there is real. Oh, it's not.
N-
It's not censored
Not
for
censored
the
in the right way.
benefit of the people that I just said that this was for. That
And that's it. That's all.
that's
That's it.
all.
That's all. Yeah, the run spot
Right.
run just really I
Thank you, Chris.
just
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate you
we appreciate you, Chris,
because
because
that
you couldn't make this up. You just couldn't make this up.
my
Um,
sentiments exactly. Thank you, Chris. You
yeah,
are appreciated.
I just, and then it just went downhill from there. Um, one thing that I said, and I said it a couple of times, was he keeps doubling down on this. I don't know what Project 2025 is. I don't know who those people are. He said something to the effect of, it sounds like some folks got together and put together some thoughts. What? But then later he says that there were very fine people in his administration, and he's talking about all the folks that worked with him when he was in office, and
Of
very fine
course.
folks, and they did such a good job. Well, sir, half of those folks are the architects of Project 2025. And this is not something I'm making up. This is something that is easily verifiable. Easily, you can easily check me on that. There are quite a few architects of the Mandate for Leadership, Project 2025 mandate and guidebook for what all of the policies and changes that they want to make to all of the entire 3 branches of government. And he says he doesn't know them. He doesn't know what Project 2025 is, yet many of them worked for him or were in his administration.
Hey, I'm gonna give
So
you some
which is
fast facts because we do talk Project 2025. We got it, and we will. Well, I mean, we're gonna keep covering it because this entire all his policies are in there in some
Right.
form or fashion, and it was created by people that worked for him. But fast
Right.
facts, and this is verified by CBS News, that at least 80 proposals that would revive executive orders and other policies of Trump's administration from 2017 to 2020 are in Project 2025. 170 proposals that match ideas Trump's campaign has published on its campaign website or match things he said at rallies, speeches, and in interviews in Project 2025. 21 more proposals that match both Trump's past actions and his campaign promises and statements are inside of Project 2025. To say that he knows nothing about it, he has nothing to do with it, and it wants to be as far away from it as possible is not only categorically false and a damn lie, it is a blatant play in your face.
Yes.
And that the moment that I think we say this often, but I don't think we say it as often. You don't realize how much because of how we struggle with change and trauma in America. And every time there's a change or trauma, you're told that this is not who we are, and we don't address the fact or the root cause of anything. There's this false semblance sometimes for people, an affinity for this country that doesn't exist. And it
Yeah.
can be all of those things, and it can be all of the things that it is. And it's been a much better place for people, a lot of people at one point in time. And there's a lot of people that want to go back to that place.
Right.
But because of that gloss, and when that happens, we start to believe that our elected officials should have do have the best intentions for us. But the more that you learn about how this works, how they remain in that space, even if they do by chance get elected duly by the people that they serve, by
If
chance, if that were to happen, how they
right.
stay, once you learn, you start to consider that there could be something aside from the fact that your best interest and what you need in your community is what they are focused on.
Yeah.
And so banking on that is why he can say with the full throat, I have nothing to do with it. And people want to believe him.
They want to believe him, and also I think that this race is, I don't know that I've been able to communicate it well because people still keep saying, oh, well, I'm going to vote all Democrat. I'm like, you're missing it. At what point do we begin to look beyond the color of the ballot that we are casting? Um, and if you look at how many Republicans, and VP Harris named some of them this evening. She talked about getting an endorsement from Dick Cheney. She talked about getting an endorsement from Liz. She talked about getting an endorsement from Liz Cheney. She talked about getting an endorsement from all of the different Republicans that she has gotten different endorsements from throughout the time that she has been nominated, one put forth as the presumptive nominee and then the official nominee for the Democratic Party. She also has said that she will appoint a Republican to her cabinet. At some point, it's got to not be so much about party politics. And I'm not saying that this is any time coming soon, but at some point, it's got to not be about party politics, and it's got to be about the people. One thing that she said in her closing statement that I appreciated, and we can argue or debate on how accurate or how much I think she means it or wants to mean it. And we can talk about how her policies, reflect this statement. But one of the things that Vice President Harris said in her closing statement is, when I was a prosecutor, when I have been vice president, in all of my jobs, I have had one job, and that is to represent the people. I did not and have never asked, are they Republican or a Democrat? Because my job is the people. And I think that that is such an important statement because we have reached a point in our politics where it's about capitalism. It's about how much money can each campaign raise. It's about who has the best talking points. It's about who can get the best interviews. And in Trump's case, it's about who can be the loudest and the wrongest, but still get the audience and reach my target demographics that I'm trying to reach. And not about the fact that, yeah, we want someone like Vice President Harris in office because we for damn sure can't have Trump. And also, fracking is bad. It just is. Yes,
Bigly bad.
it's bigly bad.
Bad,
I,
bigly.
I just don't
It's
know
not
another way
good.
to say that. And
Um,
I got some of the most comments on that one comment that I put on Threads, but I'm like, and folks are like, progress, not perfection. I'm like, yeah, that's great. And also, no matter who we get into office, prayerfully not 45, because I think that there's one candidate you can negotiate and work with over the other. Like there are things that we need to hold, to your point, all of our elected officials accountable for. And just a reminder, we've said this in previous shows, it's not just about who we elect in office and the front office that we're looking at. It's also about the folks behind them and the folks to the side of them and the folks working with them. Because as I said, if she becomes president, then she's already said she'll appoint a Republican to her cabinet. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but I am saying
I'm
we
glad
have
she
to.
said it, but I don't think that she should have had to.
I'm glad she said it, and I don't think she should have had to. That exactly. I think that we have to be mindful of who we elect also has the power to appoint many other positions. Trump was elected into office. His administration had the power to appoint federal judges, which is why we now have judges like Judge Eileen Cannon presiding over his case in Florida. She is a Trump appointee. So let's just be mindful. We cannot all, if you're Republican, you shouldn't be voting Republican all down the ballot. If you're a Democrat, maybe you shouldn't be voting Democrat all down the ballot. Research and actually look at the people that you are voting for. Who are they voting for? What are they voting for? What are they saying? Have they shifted in their policies? On our show last week, we pulled up the vote on I pulled up the vote on the bill that passed here in Georgia for the Safe Schools Act, and highlighted on in one day they have 5 votes, and it went from 33 to 52 to 60 something to 3, or whatever the numbers were. Pay attention to stuff like that because it's important. And so if we're not truly for the people in all of these topics that, some that were discussed tonight and some that weren't: immigration, national debt, economics, healthcare, jobs, the union, the tech industry, crime, Ukraine, China, Palestine, Haiti, Gaza, uh, education and student loans came up just a little bit. Foreign policy was heavy in the conversation tonight. So, and climate and environmental change and justice. If we're not really focusing on these things and we're not electing people who care about what we care about and care about, the folks in Flint who still don't have clean water, and even before the folks in Flint didn't have clean water, the folks in Mississippi who don't have access to clean water and still don't. If we're not talking about that, if we're not talking about the lasting impacts of fracking, yes, progress over perfection. And also, it's hot as hell. It's hot as hell, y'all. And our earth is fragile. And I just don't know how many more times I can say that. And there's so many things that, because this is news for us, there's so many things that impact our communities that we don't realize are climate and environmental in nature. So we're just like, oh, well, at least, that's not my problem right now. Yes, it is. If you have children who have asthma, if you are struggling to breathe more and more, if you have chronic illnesses that are running rampant in your community, if you walk outside and you can smell something in the air, chances are you're probably near a water cleaning or sewage facility or something in your community, because they tend to build those in Black and brown and disenfranchised communities. Those are all climate and environmental issues. And so if we're not paying attention to things like that, if we're not paying attention to when, 45 gets up and says that immigrants and convicts are stealing, they were African-American jobs tonight. If we're not paying attention to that, one, he's saying stuff like that to cause division. because if they can divide us, then we don't have conversations like this so that we're looking out for each other as we need to. If we're not talking about seriously what our foreign policy looks like, because our international and foreign relations are very important. Trump took us out of NATO, among other international and foreign policies that we really need to be a part of. Harris is not perfect. No politician is. And also, we have to be mindful of our foreign relations. We just have to. We just have to. And like, we are all in this world, we all exist together. And by no stretch of the imagination is the US on any solid ground to take a moral high ground when it comes to foreign policy, by any stretch. And also, we were in such worse condition when Trump was in office. We cannot afford to do that anymore. So, if we are not electing people who are for the people and for us, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? And why are we doing it? And we should quit.
Well, I want to address that. I'll also do a fact check of some other foolishness, and it's after 11, so I'll say bullshit they said. But I'm gonna take this time to break some news. Taylor Swift has endorsed Kamala Harris. That breaking news uh, after the debate, this was posted about 13 minutes ago. Taylor Swift said, like many of you, I watched the debate tonight. If you haven't already, now is a great time to do your research on the issues. As Tiffany just explained to you, specifically issues at hand and the stances these candidates take on the topics that matter to you most. As a voter, I make sure to watch and read everything I can about this proposed policies and plan their proposed policies and plans for the country. I thought that breaking news was especially important to share because it's as an example of somebody that watched the debate and made a decision. And I'm not saying that her decision couldn't have been made before the debate. Maybe it was. She went on to say that a Donald Trump account posted a fake AI post of her, and this is probably something that scheming, scamming, criminal, felonious people do.
That was a
Create fake
mouthful.
posts. and so, and so she said recently, I was made aware that AI of me falsely endorsed Donald Trump's presidential run was posted to his site. So now that can confirm that and she won't be the only one.
No,
And
absolutely
they're
not.
going to be in tears as they talk about they're going to come up with something, maybe a disease or something. But after the performance tonight, if we're being honest, there was only one sane person that was presented to us. Only
Agreed.
one. There was only one sane person. So,
Yes.
despite what you feel, how you felt, what you thought, or maybe you feel that your feelings are facts, and somehow we've landed into that place in this country. God forbid we remain there. Facts are not your feelings are not facts.
No, they are not.
The rumbling in your stomach was not an indication of a decision that you should make for your life and your livelihood and the lives of the people that live around you. He started to speak about Springfield, Illinois, today when he detected that he had lost his footing. She, we need to talk about how she expertly handled him. It's kind of like she cracked
Some filth.
him and threw him into a frying pan like an egg and took some time to decide on how she was going to make it. Do I want it over easy? Do I want it scrambled? Do I want it with
Scramble,
cheese?
little salt.
Oh no, wait a minute. I'm talking
Something.
to a felon. I don't want any seasoning because they can't afford that.
in the beautiful, masterful way in which she brought up. Funny that coming from a convicted felon. I said, oh shit, we've arrived at this part in the evening of the debate, and I just couldn't be more grateful because really he said something about her VP pick being horrible. And I posted on threads and said, not the person who picked a VP running mate who admitted to having sex with a couch. You picked a running mate who admitted to having sex with a couch, and you want to talk about Vice President Harris's down home, I'm sure Midwest country eating Tim Waltz who would stop and help you fix your car battery if you needed help with that in Minnesota. Because what? But you have buyer's remorse over here with your hillbilly elegy VP pick. That's not me being rude, y'all. That's the name of his book and the movie or show or whatever it was that came out with the same name. You want to talk about somebody's VP pick? I just don't think that that was a wise decision because we all know who your VP pick was. And also, I want your thoughts on this, Alex, because at one point, I can't remember if it was David Muir or Lindsay Davis that asked Trump something about abortion rights, and they said, JD Vance said that you would do XYZ, and Trump said out of his mouth, "Oh, I haven't really talked to him about that." I'm sorry, what? You haven't talked to your running mate about one of the top policy discussions that everyone wants to know about, abortion and reproductive rights? You haven't talked to your running mate? First of all, I don't believe you. I just don't believe you. Second,
Well, I actually do believe that. He's not the type
that's
of person that
insane.
talks to people. He talks at people. You're not going to convince me that he's ever sat in a conversation and intently listened to somebody speak to him. I've never seen it. I've never seen it done. I've never seen it on display. I've never seen it done as he was speaking to his vice president. I've never seen him done as he's speaking and sitting down for an interview when he had his show The Apprentice. I've never ever seen it. I've never seen that. So I have to call foul because I've never seen it. I can keep going on the times that I can reference that I haven't seen it, but I still can't come up with the time that I have.
You might be right, and I just really
He's
hate
the,
that.
after that first presidency and the second and the third time he's ran, Lindsey Davis said, "It's been 9 years since you ran for the first time. Do you have a plan yet?" The reason he doesn't have a plan is because he wasn't prepared the first time because he didn't know he was going to run. But let me
No, it didn't.
remind, because some of you are just now checking in, I heard from someone this week that said, I have to confess something to you. I have told you for years that I have voted and I've never voted before. I'm going to vote in this election for the first time. I can't have any judgment. Thank you for your commitment to yourself. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's really what I had to say because it's a very serious business where we are. But
No,
him not
it
having a plan is not indicative of his foolishness, even though he is foolish.
is.
President Barack Obama ran and passed the Affordable Care Act in the year 2012. From that time, the current Republican Party, or the previous Republican Party before it became the Trump Republican Party, but it still has a lot of the same characters, vowed at that point that they would take it and repeal it. And they ran on repealing Obamacare through Obama's second term up until Hillary and Trump ran together. And his administration sat in there for 4 years and did absolutely nothing but complain about something that over 33 million Americans utilize every day. And for those that are not utilizing it because of the Affordable Care Act marketplace, they are benefiting it from their private health insurance plans that now must cover their pre-existing conditions. That means
Yes.
if you have a child with asthma, your insurance has to cover their asthma. Before this act, this is the egregious country that claims to be the best on the planet that doesn't give its citizens health care at all. They barely wanted to give you health care during a plague. He was in
Literally,
office during the plague and didn't even want to give you a stimulus to help you until he put his name on the check, which delayed it. It's not like it was his money to give you.
it was not. He
But I
also did
said
the
all
thing
of that to
that
say
Congress did.
that they
I
had
just
no
have to
plan
keep
then.
saying that.
So
Yeah,
him having no plan is synonymous with them having no plans. And they are and history will tell you this. I can tell you this because I'm passionate about it and I believe what I'm saying. But they are an obstructionist party. Their goal is not policy. So
no,
we went back and forth at the beginning. You were like, I want to hear policy. You're a policy person. You're a policy nerd. They don't do policy. So when
they
they
don't.
do present one, it's really just to fuck with you because they don't care about the policy. They don't care. They want to pass their policies. They don't care about anybody else. And they are so siloed. They even speak to them in public settings, which makes them seem like lunatics.
Yeah. Well, let me not go there. But yes, I agree. And to your point,
And some of them might be.
Trump said in his closing statements that she hadn't done anything, which I thought it was very odd that he used his entire time for closing statements just to talk about how much she didn't do, which
Well,
isn't
he wanted
true.
to say that, but he's also been calling her dumb, which is why she directed you. And some of you, I hope that you spend your scrolling tonight as you try to scroll before you go to sleep, and you're on social media trying to laugh and see the memes. Go and look at footage of his rallies, like she told you to do. Go look. He's been talking
He
about
wasn't
her,
making
calling her dumb, and I don't know how somebody is dumb and also well, you were the president. You were the president. And
there
so
is no
because and that's what
EPA
happens
requirements for
when you send your
president.
standards to hell. When you send your standards to hell, anything could happen.
And I also want to highlight something that you said talking about Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. If you are in a state like me in Georgia, where your Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, aka healthcare.gov options seem to be overly expensive, don't have a lot of options, they have high deductibles, or they're just all out not good plans, that is not the president's fault. Okay? That is up to your state leadership. So one
It
thing
wasn't the
we're
result of the Affordable Care
it
Act
was
or
not the
Obamacare.
result of that. No. So, for example, in my state, our governor, uh, Brian Kemp, opted, it was an option, opted to basically reject some of the federal financing and options and stipends and things that you can get if you fully
It, it,
expand Medicaid and if you uh, basically follow some of the rules that the federal government does. Georgia is one of 12 states that has opted to do that. And so if you are in a state where you do not have some of the same benefits and options as other states may have, don't look at the president, look at your state leadership and see what they decided to do or not do on your behalf and then make some decisions on that level. I just wanted to point that out.
make some decisions about where you want to continue to live. Because the
Well,
more that you read about people that don't care about you, and I don't, and I really, shout out to all of you that have you taken one for the team and you're going to be an activist until you die. I really hope that people go and put flowers on your grave because you have a short life. You should not stay in hell. And the thing is, they want to keep you there, so they tell you that it's like this everywhere, and it's not. It's not. It's not. It's crazy. And the crazy thing is, if they'll do that to block you getting health care for citizens that don't need Medicaid, that is how many Medicaid subsidies are missing from your state for people that do get them. That means there are children still possibly missing meals and not getting the type of care that they need from their pediatricians because you have a greedy state. uh, there are 13 states that are in this union that rejected food funding for children. This funding was specifically for the children to eat. And the same
Right.
party that wants to complain about transgender people in bathrooms when transgender people are less than 1% of the population on the planet. So they're not overrunning anything. But if you can't create space for people that have bladders to go to the bathroom, and you spend money and funds on ads, television ads that cost upwards of $70,000. When you see those
Right.
political ads, these aren't pennies in the bank.
Right. No, they're not.
So
They're
they
not.
spend the money on that, and then they refuse to ensure that your kid, and if your kid's eating, you should be concerned about the ones that in your zip code that aren't.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. I actually saw a post a bit earlier that was trying to. I want to find the number, but of course, you close Instagram and the whole thing refreshes. But I just saw something that said something about. I think it said 12,000 um, students in a particular county here are unhoused, like high school students, and I, again, things like that have nothing to do with the president. So when we say vote down the ballot, we are quite literally talking about voting down the ballot from federal to state to local elections. Really, the latter two are going to impact you quite a bit even when the person the blah, 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 even when the president uh makes decisions that don't impact you. Your local and your state elections, your mayor, your commissioners, your governor, your lieutenant governor, your secretary of state, those positions, your congressional leaders, your state congressional leaders, those positions are absolutely impacting you. And so I can't stress that enough. Were there any other points that and I also I just have to say this, even though I'm sure it goes without saying. And David Muir did a fact check live about this, which kudos to David Muir and Lindsay Davis doing the best that they could with a live fact check. I was here for that. Thank you so much. It's very hard to keep up with all of the lies and misinformation and disinformation because there's a difference between the two that Trump was giving. But when he started talking about people in Springfield eating their pets, um, I just can't stress enough that that's just not true. And David
It's
Muir,
racist.
it's so racist.
He was talking about Haitians.
It's just
And that's
racist.
what they've been saying on their media. Haitians are
Yes,
doing this. That's
yes,
racist.
that's racist. It's wrong. David Muir said, I spoke to the city manager and he said there's no evidence of that occurring. And he was, Trump went to argue back and forth with him, and David Muir said, again, there's no evidence of that. And so moving on.
Well, he was president. I mean, his vice presidential candidate was asked the same question. And so when he was pressed on the fact that the city manager had addressed it and said that there was nothing to it, he said people are calling my office and saying that it's true. And let me tell you again, and I hate to do this, but it's the only way that somebody somewhere will hear this and it will all start to click.
Right.
The reason that they talk about it, and they sound like lunatics because they're only talking to their people, is because the news networks that they watch, news networks, they're the ones that put these lies out there. So it's a vicious cycle. It's like the demented people that work within their campaign come up with these crazy ass lies and conspiracies.
Right.
They will talk on a quick stand up or quick hit interview with a news pundit during the day and float that in one of their talking points. That's where it first enters the ether. They float it onto the news network. The news network responds to it. It's already been floating in 4chan and all of these dark, dark, dark places
Very
So by
dark.
the time it hits a mainstream network and it's repeated and they're pressed on it, they say, well, this is what I'm hearing. You're hearing it because y'all made it up. But now you've got enough of your people talking about it. You put it out there and then pull back. You don't
Yeah.
have a source, you don't have a valid anything to validate that statement as fact. It is a lie.
Right. Right.
But when they are targeted, which they often are, at specific racial and ethnic groups and cultures, and the pullback, and then there's not accountability for those people, I'm left here trying to explain to you what they're doing, which usually is not going to hit because once you're explaining, you're usually losing.
And you have said that multiple times.
It's true. When you
Mul-
want to sit there and explain to somebody about something, you've lost. That's how it is. You
And
got to
he's
try
also
and
just
win them.
he and his team just are not good at explaining things. And that was evident tonight. And to be honest, one of the rules was that they couldn't have pre-written notes or anything like that. I don't think he would have done any better if he had those. So if we're going to,
He has no
wrap this,
policies. He
none.
has talking points
He
of
has
things that he makes
concepts.
up.
Wait,
And
he
he
has
also,
concepts,
this man makes up things, and if he says them, then he believes they're true.
but he has concepts, Alex. When asked, did he have a replacement for Obamacare? He said he had concepts.
Because he
And so
said he's not the president. So,
he's not the president. And so I just want to, give him his
but
credit.
again, you were 9 years ago, and then that was 9 years ago when you ran for the first time. So you've already been the president. So are you conceptually saying that concept has continued to evolve over the last 9 years? Because if that's the case, nobody wants it. If you cannot take your concept into a proof of concept and give us at least proof that the concept works before you
After
take it into a
9 years.
final, like, come on now, get the hell out of here. We don't want that. I don't want that.
So if you had to if you had to give a grade for the debate this evening, how would you grade both of the candidates in their performance for the debate tonight?
I just like him. He's been graded on a curve since the man has been president. He's been graded on a curve since he brought his privileged ass down that gold escalator and forced us to deal with him every day for the last 9 years. And then when people talk about him, they don't talk about how he's declined. They don't talk about how he's possibly demented. They don't talk about how he lies constantly. You don't even know. He doesn't even remember because everything he says, he just goes with. You know what I'm saying? So the curve that I grade him on usually starts with -50, and it's a scale of 0 to 10. And if I was grading him to tonight, because he answered a question and a half and then told me he had concepts, we didn't even hit damn -50. I would give that orange man a good -62. And
Okay.
that's a reach. That's like a -D these days. D on the other side. That's how bad it was. I mean, this is a babbling but buffoon, like a bumbling idiot. Um, bam, bam. I mean, I could go down the B's. I could give an adjective about how egregious he is for every letter of the alphabet, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't take me no time.
No. Okay. And your grade.
Atrocious. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Okay. Your
The
grade.
worst. And again, imagine if you had to listen. And here is the thing, because this is why I feel like people, you are also here. And I know, I say plague because that's what it was. Try not to scare you. 1 million people died here in the best place on earth to live, allegedly, by the documentation.
Didn't we
And
have the highest death count in the world?
That's what they say about the place. And a million people died. A million people that probably, at least half of them would still be here. They are just gone. Up
Right.
and the person leading this country at that time said, "Well, let's try
Drink
drinking
bleach.
bleach." Seriously, full throated. With people standing behind him nodding, like, yeah. And when the doctors and the scientists said, no, that's a bad idea, all of his people turned on the doctors and the scientists and then started calling them liars. They started threatening, showing them, showing up at their houses. Like, you people, you also lived through it. And I get it. In your plague state, sometimes you're like, no. This was never normal. You didn't hear from the president every day, ever. Did not. That was not a thing. And then he got all these saggy face people that just make up things right behind him. I mean,
Alex,
faces at the knees. It just got crazy. He brought Tails from the crib back and put a new fresh blonde wig on it and had her go out there and lie every day to where people that fact check lies started repeating alternative fact like it was something that should be considered. And you're sitting at home like, oh, damn, what's going on? The next thing that happens is all of a sudden you start turning on the news and it's no more news. They start bringing people in here. It's me, you, and I too have had panels. I have hosted shit for 20 years. There's panels behind me all over the place. But this is a special night. But what they're doing every day from 10 to 12, they put three people here and they say, "Hi, Joe. What's your reaction?" Who gives a damn about Joe's reaction? That's not news. It's a waste of your time and you are being played. I said this tonight and I mean it. If what we had tonight, people, they're like the moderators were on point, love them. Y'all fell in love because you only know the internet and moderated. These people were journalists, okay? These people, this is a professional thing that they were doing, and this is part of the capacity that they have as a professional. And they did the job tonight. The tennis, and I'm not a journalism professor, but as a journalist, I will tell you that the number
you
one
almost were,
priority
though. You almost were. Let's
the number
literally.
one the number one priority is to tell the truth. And I know Snap, Instagram, whatever you're using today. Picture, food and dog toe picture, right? It's a picture for everything. But the second tenet of journalism is that you, journalist, providing the truth, you are not the story. So I am troubled when you start can tell me more about the person that you watch on the news. And I get it. We are a vain people. You want to see what they're wearing, what kind of part, what kind of wig, what type of lipstick. That's it. And you also want them to look good while they're telling you the story, but they're not the story. The fact is you need to get the fact from them. So when they become the story, then they also become the problem. That's why in regular news networks, people that do that, you start and your coworker, they fire you because now you become the story. TJ Holmes, Amy Robach. These people were journalists for over 2 decades. They're older than me. They've been doing this a much longer time. They know much better. Then they started playing in your faces every day. And while they laughed with you, snap, picture, they started doing what they were doing and made themselves the story. You have to go. Your president that came in, ushered in this terrible era, came in and made himself the story. Since he left office and started running, each term, the 2 terms he's last run, he doesn't talk about anything but himself.
No, that's not true. He talked about Hannibal Lecter and how much he loves him.
I'll rest my case because Hannibal Lecter was never a real person. Hannibal Lecter never had a social security number. You know why? Because he was a character that was written into a movie. I saw some I forgot. I can't. If I could find the tweet, we're out of time. But if I could find the tweet, I saw someone tonight very confused about something that he said, and then they were like, "Wait, is he quoting?" And Probably because he's an entertainer. The only thing that was coming out of his mouth tonight was movie quotes because that's where he lived. And this person, I'm not really familiar with the movie as like it's one that I've seen, but it's not one that like I could give you the script. So I when I remember the name, but I'm like I'm gonna look back into that because if he went with this narrative and nobody caught it, and this person was like, "No, that's from a movie,"
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if he was quoting.
and you wouldn't be surprised because he's the type of person that plays in your face. That's why. He's the type of person that plays in your face, and he wants to play it in for the next 4 years. Like, what type of selfish old person wants you to watch them get old? That's literally what he wants America to do. And I don't know old people that are usually that selfish that I want to subject an entire country to sit and listen to me every day and when we all know that when you get old, the decline happens. This man knows he's not moving like he was. I mean, he eats Big Macs and KFC. There's not that much more time left for
Alex,
anyone that eats that. No,
please.
okay, all right. It's not food. So I'm just saying, it's just not.
What is your grade for Vice President Harris before we are kicked off of the interwebs?
A strong 7.5. She's a little rusty. She hadn't been on the stage in a minute, but she came with policy. She came with fact. I don't give anybody tens on anything. I don't even give myself a 10 when I'm rated on a scale like that because nobody's perfect.
Right.
Um, Perfecting is a process, and that's my belief. So I believe that for her. I think she did exceptional, but compared to a -62, damn, like what else could you ask for?
I mean, touche. Um,
Phenomenal.
I don't even know that I would put 45 on a scale. I think a -62 would be gracious, and I don't want to do that. I just kind of want to put him in a corner with a dunce cap on, and so I'll leave him there. For Vice President Harris, I think I would agree somewhere between.
Explain what a dunce is for the babies.
Is that old? Oh, I'm not sure that I know how to define that. Nope, that's rude. I can't say that. Yikes.
I
I'd like
mean,
to sit him in a corner with a hat on it that says, "Take stupid out of America again." Um, that's the best I can do without causing too much offense. Um,
the
and so
number of
that's
people that are going to try to eat dogs and cats because he said it, please don't. Please. No one is doing that. And if you bring a plague to this land because of this man, I personally will come and find and probably pay
Alex.
somebody to become Hannibal Lecter for you. Okay? Let's not do that. Let's not eat dogs and cats or rats or anything that like sh- I just I'm so baffled. I really am. And
Well,
I got a
Alex,
little excited. It was that type of night, but
some people do eat raccoons and other roadkill things, so we can't tell them not to eat that. Um,
dogs.
dogs and cats is that's
And
a
I
reach.
know again, this country is not
That's
above accusing entire races of people of eating that. I lived in this country
it's
when y'all
not.
did that. I know
Did
that you will do it.
would would. So yeah, let's not do
And he
that.
would say something like, "Oh, I didn't mean that because I love Oriental people." Because that's who he is. And the nerve to bring up Ashley Babbitt, who should have complied. I can't. I'm just so surprised at the night. I haven't drinking a thing, and I really wanted to drink this throughout the broadcast, but I am so, and I think in the morning I still will. The fact that also live, I found a format that works for me. This one's a little bulky, but the fact that I got to use my hands when I talk. I got visuals. I know how to make this work. I'll probably be back here in the morning because I'm not gonna be able to sleep immediately. I have issues with what I just I have issues with what I just watched because we now not only normalize it, but then y'all went out of your way for 8 weeks to call Joe Biden, who'd be riding his bike. Like y'all really destroyed that man, and and I'm grateful. Thank you, because we would not be where we are today.
We wouldn't. And he
So
he
things.
has absolutely turned in all of his care. I knew it was done for him when he told the reporters, "What do you have any regrets?" And he said, "Talking to y'all," and walked away.
He did not know that he was gonna be grateful, and
He just
I
the
love that for
peace.
Joe. I love
I
that.
love that for Joseph. Okay, my grade for Vice President Harris, I would give her about the same, maybe a 7. I think that she was just so baffled at the level of
Can we?
lies and
Because
ignorance.
she was the thing. For those of you that were watching and you didn't know this, she had never met him before.
Never met him before. He did not want to shake her hand. He's just a big
But to
mhm,
see how baffled that she was, because although she knew what an egregious beast that he is, I don't think that she imagined that this buffoon would be presented that way so close to her. She seemed startled, confused, and she wasn't confused about policy. She was just really
no.
baffled, like, this is who he
How can
really
so
is.
many lies come out of, and her favorite cuss word is MF, and I saw it about to escape her lips. She was this close to calling him that, and she took a very long pause at one point in answering something and was just like, whew. I said, oh, the black woman is in her tonight in full effect. Because at one point she just was laughing at him. I was like, oh, he's cooked. Anytime a black woman laughs at your lies, you're cooked. Like, she just watched him lying and just chuckled mightily. And that just really blessed me throughout the evening. Very meme worthy. I've got a couple
I
of
mean,
memes.
because I
Um,
know there's some that you want to share with me. I want
yeah,
to go through some of my highlights. I think it's really important, and I don't mind taking the time. You're here tonight. Bless the Lord. Come back tomorrow if you get sick of me. That's fine. Um, I'd like to. I sent you an article, and that's not the meme that I want to share right now. But
okay.
I really want to know if this article is true. I'm not going to amplify. I don't amplify things like that. But really will say that this man and his cabal of criminals is really at an all-time low.
Cabal of criminals is crazy, accurate, and also crazy.
I mean, he's surrounded by a cabal of criminals.
You're not
But
wrong.
if what I just shared with you is true, my God in heaven and hell,
I
because you talk a lot of shit to also be so felonious.
so felonious, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't the only one. Like I
Actually, and I found
just
my. I actually, I'm gonna confirm my reporting, and then
okay,
I'm gonna move on to my memes, and we can come back to this. But I
okay,
will say that I'm gonna confirm my reporting that the cabal of criminals is out of control, and Byron Donald's political career was marred by allegations of a troubled past, including drug dealing and bank fraud. Now, wow, for somebody that uses but with the shifty mouth like he has, I am not surprised that you're a fraud. I am not. And I have found a new light because you sit there and no one's ever thought to ask you. No one's ever thought. But when you come out, and he was one of the first persons to jump into the spin room. He's had a lot to say about Trump tonight and the lies that he put on Kamala. And guess what? Wow, bank fraud and drug dealing. And I know that you're from Crown Heights, which is just a couple blocks from me. So for you to go down there and then find you a snow bunny and make you some children,
Alex. Alex.
fraud, bank fraud.
Alex.
My God, today. Um, I want to jump into some of the great memes and and comical things that I've seen tonight. The first thing is on my screen. I mean, because I validated, I don't mind. I'm gonna leave it there just for this piece. I'll move on from it. I know,
Okay.
but listen,
Okay.
sir, bank fraud. Now, come on, sir. Hey, I I can't wait. I can't wait because we'll come on back to that. One that I saw today that I really enjoyed. Um, and I was doing that while we were preparing for this next one. I would jump into I didn't say them all, but this one I just saw that I also think that you're gonna love. Come on, guys. I don't want to get on here and scroll. Okay, all right, there we are.
Not a dumpster fire next to her on the stage.
Is
I
there a
need
better meme? Is there
no.
a better meme?
I need that immediately. I need that asaptually. Yes. It's
I
quite
want to
perfect.
say I want to shout out to Auntie Dionne Warwick because, as
Yes.
always, she
Yes.
comes, she leaves, and she destroys. She does what Auntie Dion is here to do.
Because
She's
the way
somebody's
that she
grandma.
said
She ain't my grandma, but
yelling and lying, doing all that yelling and lying. And that's
that's what you were doing.
actually verbatim what there was one that I said, now since Dunce Cap is old, I'm gonna have to explain this reference as well. But there's one that I put that where I said when he was yelling, what was it? I gotta find what I said. All I heard when he said she is Biden was I am Weasel. And for those who are too young to know what I Am Weasel is, I Am Weasel was an old school cartoon that used to be on Cartoon Network, which is now no longer in existence, which is crazy. Um, and it used to say, I am Weasel, I am Weasel. And then he would just yell, I am Weasel. And that was all I heard coming out of Trump's mouth this evening multiple times, but particularly when he was just yelling, she's Biden. She is Biden. I don't know why she keeps trying to get away from it. She is Biden. I'm like, okay, but you're not proving any kind of points by yelling this. So Auntie Dion is correct when she said doing all of that yelling and lying. He did nothing but that, which is why he has to have a dunce cap. Oh, I could pull up a dunce cap for those who are watching us. If you're not watching us, you should go to
A
noirplus.tv.
dunce cat was something that this country used to put on the heads of slow learners. So one
That
of the
was a
reasons,
very good way of saying that.
and we don't use dunce caps just like we don't use the R word
We do
because
not.
they put dunce caps on R word kids. That's the actual definition. So that's one of the words that one of the reasons that that word is no longer with us. It's very degrading.
It is very degrading. We don't use that word.
Another meme I wanted to share with you. I thought it was wonderful.
If six of y'all went out,
Say it with a run. Hi, for you will really the whole. You need to run. She said,
because
six of y'all went out. Hi. That's what she said. That's how that went.
Whitney was really on her good drugs when she sang
Not only
that.
did she just finish that debate, the following tweet says that she also continued to go campaign at a rally right afterwards.
She did. I just saw her walking on a plane on the plane with Doug. So she did. Trump looked like he stayed in the crowd for a little bit. I'm
And
not
then
sure.
went to the drive-through to get his nightly McDonald's. We know he loves McDonald's. He fed the national football champions that from the White House when he was in office because he said that they would love that, but like athletes eat that. They don't. But he spent so much time in Taiwan, he would never know that. Um,
Well, because he needs one of these.
Jesus Christ.
It's time to go to bed. He needs a dunce cap. And I wouldn't mind seeing him write on a chalkboard, "I will be good" 97 times. Or in multiples of 45. I will be good. Or
Listen.
very Harry Potter this. I will not tell lies. That's really what I want. I want Umbridge, for my Harry Potter fans. I want Umbridge to sit Donald Trump down with her special pen and have him write, "I will not tell lies." That's what I want. For those who don't watch Harry Potter, her special pen makes it so that it embeds what you're writing with the pen into your skin.
We had some truth over on the Fox News Network tonight.
Did we? Harris and Trump trade barbs in high stakes showdown.
Make no mistake about it. Trump had a bad night. This is pretty much her night.
Well,
duh.
I mean, he looks like he almost had a coronary saying it. But as much as everyone talked about Biden's performance after the first debate, I just feel like this is a rightful turnaround of circumstances. Everyone wanted Biden to step out because of his age and everything else. I just don't understand why nobody is calling on Trump to do the same. He's clearly, he is reminding me of Herschel Walker's campaign speeches at this point. And Herschel Walker, for those who were not following the race between him and Warnock here in Georgia, was saying just some of the most, like
we don't have time to get into what like trend lines and polls and
we don't
data, but the trend line will show you that these are the type of people that they put in front of their people, which tells you how they feel about not just their people, but people in general. The fact that they can pass off somebody like that and say, hey, look, America, we want y'all to follow this man. And in fact, we want to create policies so that we remove everyone that puts checks and balances in place so that they can be loyal to him. Meanwhile, across the pond, the place that we didn't sing Kumbaya and We Shall Overcome to get away from, their monarchs are dying. Almost everybody in Buckingham Palace just finished their final round of chemotherapy. So we don't know what's going on over there.
Alex,
just bear with me. And so we have they're killing monarchies. They keep them as figureheads. We're over here trying to build one.
Oh my God.
And then we're not educating people, so no one even knows what that is.
For those who don't know, we live in and work and operate in a democratic republic. Okay. Which means that we are liberated to elect democratically folks to our republic, governing body of this country. We cannot, should not have an autocratic maniac in office who said that he will be dictator on day one.
Ever.
It just shouldn't happen. And that's really That's actually all I have that
I,
left.
I got one. I got two more things.
I'm
It's
listening.
notable that he was asked about one world leader that was with him, and his response was Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban. Google it. For him to say that that's the one that's with him is insane. It's insane. It makes no sense at all. Unless he said he wants to be a dictator.
Viktor Orban being your
Pretty damn
only
close.
ally
That's pretty damn close.
is just outrageous. And I don't know. I don't have anything else to say about that. What's your second thing? Oh, this is going to be a biggie. Okay.
It's not going to be big. It's going to be
Okay.
very small.
Okay. I'm listening.
Um, as a student of history and politics,
Mm-hmm.
and spent my pastimes and bored nights watching debates with William F. Buckley from the 60s. And I have followed like the progression of things in this country. In the last 20 years, if we just talked about the types of candidates that we've had on the stage, um, it's been somewhat of a clown show. Um, I mean, we had like 12, 14, 19 Republicans on the stage one year. Like
It,
it got crazy.
it
And
did.
then we let this man come in there and name them all
We did.
because he doesn't have the capacity to retain the actual names of these people.
He does not.
But and I didn't plan on tributing paying homage to James Earl Jones tonight. And this is really indirectly. But as you sit and you listen to things that Donald Trump say, and I say it because we had to sit through this debate. Most likely, we'll never see another one. I'm going to go out on a limb. I didn't do well this weekend in my fantasy league, but I'm going to go out on a limb and use this luck to say we will not see Donald Trump in another debate in this lifetime.
No. I think his team will probably advise him to not do another one.
No, I will never. We will never see it again. Um, Chris Wallace, now at CNN, said that this was not only the worst debate that Donald Trump has ever done, this is the worst debate for Donald Trump in the American history. Well, the worst debate in American history because of Donald Trump.
He's not
That's
wrong.
a huge statement.
Yeah.
But
He's
I
not
was
wrong.
going to say that while I was listening to him, and I like to leave us all with some joy sometimes, but we wonder sometimes, like we were taught morals and values, and we were also taught about bullshit, and we were taught in subtle ways. But as you know, I know cartoons made by adults for kids always had messages for adults. Those messages were key for us as kids. And so when you listen to him and people are like, what is he saying? Who is he talking? And sometimes he is talking to his people. But other times, all you're hearing is asatana sana squash banana. The reason you're hearing that is because it's like you're listening to him and he's like, you're a baboon and I'm not. And you're like, where have I heard this before? And when I say plan, I said plan in my face, but I wanted to come back with my final analogy because that hit for you, did it not? When I said squash banana, you were like, oh my God. And you were 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 watching this on repeat. And when you're learning your words, you're repeating Zaz. It wasn't Zazu, Rafiki. You're repeating him sana squash banana, and you're repeating it. But once you learn words, you stop doing that. And you're like, what the hell is he doing? What is he doing? You that feeling right there was you learning. That is why it resonates. Because you have somebody who's literally a baboon messing with you every day and then hitting you, punching you in the stomach, doing things that are so painful, and then being like, "Oh, you're a baboon and I'm not." The fuck you are. You are indeed. You are. And with that, I promise I'm done.
Oh
I'm
my God.
done. I have had it. Um, because that's all that's all I got. I know we weren't planning to end the show on that note, but to me, I felt like what you heard tonight was some bullshit from that man. Do not vote for that. I can't tell you who to vote for. I pride myself on not doing that. But in your best interest, pick somebody else.
Literally.
There.
Literally.
And anybody else that is not in your best interest is the wrong person. Somebody that literally would go out of their way to make sure that you died or care enough to say, why don't you try drinking bleach? And never denies that because he said it.
Boldly.
From the people's house, a house that your taxes, FICA, the reason the sprinklers cut on at the White House, FICA. So the next time you look down, and I don't know how much it is on your check, but it's too damn much on mine for me to want it contributing to anything that has to do. We already got to pay for his security till he dies. Come on, y'all. Come on.
Ugh.
And that's out of pity.
Is it?
We're paying the position, paying for the position, paying to protect the position. I
I don't
don't
have
know. Usually we want
any.
to pay to protect them because they aren't babbling baboons and they hold the secrets of the nation. In this case,
That is
you're a
depressing.
baboon and I'm not. I don't know.
That is very depressing. And on that note, I'm going to go have a cookie. Because I deserve after what I just had
I
to
deserve as
endure.
well. My
So I'm
my
gonna go
meal,
have a
I ordered a meal during that treacherous time we had to listen to that, but it is what it is. This coverage concludes at this moment. Thank God there probably won't be another, but there's more obviously in the end coverage on uh, the presidential election here in the United States. And
and we
um,
still have a vice presidential debate. So that will be between JD Vance and Tim Walz. I cannot wait to see
I'm
that. We will
calling
also
now. I'm going to send my assistant.
myself, Tiffany Linnell, and Alex Haynes will be here covering that debate as well. So if you have any questions that you would like
I
us
will
to
be
cover,
absent.
if you have any questions you would like us to cover or consider, please don't hesitate to send them to us on Threads. You can send them to Black Alerts, that's BLK Alerts on Threads or X. Or Instagram, and we will see it there. You can also reach me at Tiffany Linnell on, I think, all of the platforms, at Tiff Linnell on Instagram and at Tiff Linnell on Threads. Alex, do you want the folks to get in touch with you?
I mean, it's whatever. Alex unmuted.
There you go. Uh,
Responses are sporadic and they come, usually when I have absolutely nothing to do.
which is rare. So message us at BLK Alerts. You can catch any part of this that you missed on NoirPlus.tv/news. Make sure you are following us there. All of our shows are there. We will be doing a plethora more of shows. Make sure to also follow both of our podcasts, Alex Haynes, Unmuted Nation, and myself at Tiffany Talks, where we will also upload this as a podcast episode among our other shows and discussions on both of our
We
individual
may be
shows.
back tomorrow after I tell you that Trump showed up in the spin room.
Okay, well.
See ya.
Y'all have a good night. Happy debate night. And seriously, rest in paradise to James Earl
Please
Jones.
do.
Long live the king. Adios.
Squash banana.
You know what? I can't. Bye.